Hi everybody, my name's Fern DeFay. This is another session of the Deeper Mysteries Occult Studies with the focus on the Celtic tree mysteries and the Ohms. And I wanted to give a little talk about some of my reference materials. I know that I've made mention in some of the other videos that it's kind of one of those subjects you have to study with scrutiny and use your own discernment about which sources you trust and which feel right to you, because some of our original sources are kind of hard to access because it was originally an oral system that was never written down in books until later years, from our ancient prehistory days to centuries later. It went through generations of oral legacy until it was written down by monks in the Middle Ages in Christian monasteries in the early medieval times during Celtic Christianity transitions from pagan nature wisdom teachings into their version of scholarly, biblical, write everything down and keep it accurate through time in that tradition sense. But that was already written down from their opinions, from their Christian viewpoint on everything. So even when we go back to the most original sources we have, those are still have to be taken with your own suspicion and your own listening to your intuition of what really makes sense to you. And then within that, starting from the beginning, is the Book of the Ballymote. I don't have a copy of it here to show you, but once upon a time, my mom and I were doing research years ago on the Ohms, and she got very clever with looking through the bibliographies of all of our modern pagan history books to find what's the common denominator that's the oldest source that everyone sources. And that was the Book of the Ballymote. And then we used the college interlibrary loan system when I was going to Portland State to have them get in touch with Trinity College in Dublin, Ireland, and they sent us copies of manuscripts that were from the turn of the last century in the early 1900s, that were early lithograph copies of the original manuscripts from the medieval times. And we had a copy of both the Book of the Ballymote and the Book of Lakon. And the Book of the Ballymote was started in the ancient days, and then it was translated later. But when we had, this is a picture of me holding it. We did find a picture. This was from 2002, back when I was a wee baby Dreddy, and was still in both secular and pagan college at the same time. And this is how big the book was. It was so heavy, it made me tired just holding it. And also made me tired from psychic fatigue, from feeling the vibes of it. And everything we looked through the whole book, and it was all unintelligible to us because it was in Gaelic or Latin or Greek or in hash marks of the Ohm fuse. But it was fascinating to actually see the book and hold the book. This is a close-up on just the book, but it was really quite big. And that was our relic of the Book of Ballymote. So what we did is, since we had to give it back to the school, because if I did not give it back, they would have held my school records, and I wouldn't have been able to get any grades or graduate college and gone into debt for nothing. So we had to return the books, unfortunately. And so we were like, but how do we absorb all this knowledge when we can't understand it? So my mom and I actually made a vibrational remedy of the book to make a potion of its spirit essence, bound in water and alcohol to hold its form, and we dosed ourselves with it to take it internally. So on that note, I can officially say, yes, I drink the Kool-Aid. We drink the potion. That's why I'm such a nut and obsessed with this stuff, even though it's still kind of hard to understand what's going on. So when we're also talking about the other ancient texts that are the most ancient sources that everyone refers to, the other one is the Yellow Book of Lakon, which we had a short period loan of. It was written in 1318, and we had a copy of the manuscript. So it was not the 1300s one, but it was from the early 1900s. So it was still quite amazing. But again, we couldn't read any of it, so there's no English at all. But it was quite amazing just to hold the books. Some of the other books that are from the ancient resources are the Ohm tract, also known as the Libor Ogham, or Ogham, it's spelled Leboragam in the Old Turn. Also, the Scholar's Primer, which has another name that's also inside it and hard to pronounce, but I'll just go for the English so it'll be easier for you guys. That one was started in the 7th century and was worked on through the 12th century, but then the earliest surviving text we have from it is actually from the 12th century. So that's, but good luck trying to get the original copies. You're not going to, but maybe you can find some form electronically on the internet or in a library loan. And also Wikipedia is amazing. It's so much easier and modern made than it was before. Some of the other early influential scholars who did a lot after the monks, who then in later times and research based on these manuscripts from the monks, were some of the first people who actually did the transcriptions into English that we can understand. One of the earlier works was from Roderick O'Flaherty. He was in the late 1600s. One of his books that was famous on the subject was from 1685. He was a son of one of the last chieftains of their area, and he lived in the local castle, and then was trained in modern scholarship, and he was an antiquarian interested in both local and ancient history, and so he wrote a lot on the subject of understanding his peoples and their ancient ways, and that's during the time of Cromwell, which is a bad time for anyone who knows about that. It was quite a hard time. But putting it in those times, he was in the late 1600s, and then jumping ahead, we have more people like Stuart McAllister, and there's also another dude named right there that was in McManus, who wrote on it later. So this McAllister. So Stuart McAllister was writing his books, and one of them was from 1937, The Secret Language of Ireland. And this is one of the early modern tracts that some of the neo-pagan scholars refer to. Also, a more modern version is Damien McManus from 1991, A Guide to Ohm. These have been referred to by many other people who've done research on it. I have not read those books specifically, but I figured I'd add them to the reference list just for anyone who's interested in going deeper. Those are just a couple, just of more modern versions. Moving forward in time, the books that I've actually used a lot when we first started our tree studies in like the early 2000s with my mom and I studying this, we referred to the Book of Ohms by Edward Thorson, which unfortunately I cannot show and tell because we could not find it in the library. But it is the book that actually gave me the diagram of the map of Finn's Window popped out in the 3D map of the realms and all the 5 realms and the coordinating trees and the place names, because in Finn's Window, which is in the Book of the Ballymote, it gives no translation, it just gives you the diagram. But in Edward Thorson's book, he actually has a breakdown on what the diagram means. So I wish I had that book, but it's very, very useful. I've had some other videos with diagrams off of it, which you can see in other videos, but I don't have it up to hand to do the Reading Rainbow style, here's the book. But in other ones I do have handy are the Celtic Tree Mysteries, The Secrets of the Ohms by Steve Blammers, and then also by Oak, Ash, and Thorn, Modern Celtic Shamanism by D.J. Conway, and The Wisdom of Trees, Mysteries, Magic, and Medicine by Jane Gifford. And this one is really cool because it actually is a picture book that actually shows you This is what the plant is. This is what its ohm sign is. This is its letter. This is the basic breakdown of what does it mean magically? What does it mean botanically? What does it mean for, all the different aspects, both medicinally and, magically. And it has pictures, which is really cool. So that was for Heather. This is for Hawthorne. So this one's cool because it's a really great picture book to show you what the trees look like up close. And those were some of our early resources that were greatly influential in my first round of studies. When I went deeper in studies in time, and that was in my 20s, I read a lot of those. And then in my 30s, I spent more time working with the epic White Goddess by Robert Graves. And its byline is a historical grammar of poetic myth. And this came out in, let's see, this is early 20th century. Let's see what the publishing date on this. This is 1948. This book is often referred to by most everyone who's studied in the modern time. This is the beginning of 20th century common scholarship on it, where a lot of modern authors from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s into now have been referring to him. So even though it's a bit of a challenging read, it's a really, really good reference book. So never underestimate the power of the White Goddess book. It doesn't talk just about the Ohms. It talks about many things in old pagan history in old Europe. But it has a really good section on the Ohms and lots of great diagrams. Furthermore, I have a book that is The Voice of the Trees, that is a companion guide by Mickey Mueller that is a divination deck. And in it, it has really good short descriptions on each of the trees and what they mean magically and mystically, and botanical breakdown. And this is a very good reference. I don't have the cards out handy, but just the book at the moment to show you. Another one is a fun gift that my mom found. Is called Tree Poems. They're making a pun out of Oghams and poems. They're poems about Oghams, and it's by Edward Durand, and it's really great. It gives each of the first 13 in the short count and the lunar count, not all 25, but the first 13 and the lunar count, one for each of the tree months. They each have a picture and a poem, and that's real fun. And some of the other books I don't have handy to show off is A Year of Moons, Season of Trees by Patany Glass Cone Top. And that is a good book for every one of the lunar months. She has a ritual that you can do for each of the trees to get in tune with it in a physical embodied ritual act, and that's awesome. So I recommend that. If you do any search on the internet, you're going to get so many more books. These are just the ones that I've used in physical form. Wikipedia is amazing. Always utilize that, but also use scrutiny, knowing that that's just someone's opinion that they wrote down and it's peer reviewed. Always be mindful of where we're getting our sources and how much you trust their backgrounds. But in the modern 21st era, it's so much easier to do this internet research with Google. When I started this at the turn of the millennium, I didn't use the internet as much. I mostly used books, but now I'm trying to branch out with both. So know that there's endless books out there on the Ohms, and there's lots of websites too. So there's endless references. I just wanted to give you guys a jump off of kind of like the bibliography of the ones that are near and dear to me and what I'm basing my studies on for these videos. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this session on references. And these are just my personal references. This is not the exhaustive list of everything. And just some good ideas to start off with. And with that, if you like this, go ahead and give it the thumbs up. If you're interested in getting more of these videos, push the subscribe button to have your notifications tell you when more come out. And please share this in your social media feed for others that would be interested. And thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Deeper Mysteries Occult History Studies, emphasizing our focus on the Celtic tree mysteries and the Ohms. All right, bye guys.